Hey folks, Jesse here from Onion Grass Food Forest, and today we are going to do the early spring food forest tour of 2026. It is currently about mid-April, and we're going to be taking a look at the progress here. If you're new to the channel, this is only the beginning of the second year of developing this food forest. There are some established trees that are up to 4 years old that we are building the food forest around. And as such, this is a project that's under development. So what you're going to see here today are some new extensions of the food forest. You're going to see some re-emerging of the plants we planted last year. You will see some blossoming and fruiting of trees that have now been here for 4 years. And you're also going to see some empty areas that were annuals last year and are going to be annuals this year, so they have not yet been planted. And also a couple areas that are definitely in need of improvement and weeding. But keep in mind, this is a project that is still under construction, but if you're interested, tag along. All right, early April. For the first part of the tour, we're gonna look at this area. This is almost all newly mulched. There's not a ton planted in here, but I'm gonna show you what is. And eventually this is gonna link up with some more mulching throughout here. And we've got a new trellis over there, and then we're going to head on over into the more established parts of the food forest. So let's start over here with this. So here's what's in here so far. I've got some candy stripe creeping phlox. This is a variety that I've never seen before, but I got it for Valentine's Day. So that was nice. My husband took me to the nursery and allowed me to pick something out. Here is a bee balm cutting. The bee balm at the nursery, there were 3 different colors. There was red, purple, and screaming fluorescent pink. And the bumblebees were ignoring everything but the pink. So I'm not usually a pink kind of girl, but I took the pink, and that's what this is a cutting from last year's bee balm, and we'll get to that over in the food forest. And I've planted both of these as ground cover for underneath this blueberry. This one was a recent purchase on sale. It's a Blue Ridge blueberry. It was only $15, which was great for the size of the plant. And I've also put in some early plantings of mustard that I started from seed. I've got an old-fashioned mustard here and a Florida broadleaf, and they just went through a frost last night and seem to be doing just fine, so I'm happy to see that. In the middle in there is a stick of hibiscus. I don't know if it's made it or not. We're hoping it does. You can see I have just a little bit of scallions right there. Those are a perennial scallion. Coming over here to the archway, I'll move around because of sunlight issues here. We have the jujube here, and it is just starting to put on its first leaf. So it made it through the winter. It's got a couple other little buds, so I'm happy to see that. Turning around here, I want to show you with the archway. You can see I put stepping stones on the outside, and that's so as a gardener I can walk in and pick things that are growing along the outside. Some things are going to hang down in the middle like the cucumbers, but some things might still be hanging along the outside, and I wanted an established pathway to take care of that, because you got to think about human pathways when you're creating these spaces. And then down in here I've got some snap peas. This is my first year growing these. I'm growing both a purple and a green variety, and we don't know which is which here. We just know we've got a whole bunch of them coming up, so I'm super happy to see those as kind of an early spring crop. I've also got a few sweet peas in here that are coming up. These are just for decoration. So I planted the snap peas along here on this side and another batch of them over there on that side. And we're going to come around. This is a new guild right here. And all of the mulch is new. The only thing that's somewhat established is the persimmon tree here. You can see here we've got a Saijo persimmon. It's just putting on its first leaves of the season, so it has not done much yet this year. This was planted last year, so this is only this tree's second season on this property. And last year when it came, it was just a stick because I ordered it through the mail, so it was really just this central lead and that was it. So all of this side growth and branching is last year's growth. But the guild we are trying to create, let me step back here. I've got the persimmon there. Coming around, I have a knockout rose. I know you're like, where is the rose, Jess? It's right here. This is going to be like a magenta color. Most of the knockouts are. There are very few knockout colors, but it's one of the only roses that will survive here in East Tennessee because of the blights and mildews and whatnot that we have. So my choices in colors on roses tend to be magenta, coral, and pink, which is fine. I like all of those colors, but you know, variety is the spice of life. This is another one of the blueberries we got on sale. This one's a rabbit eye, and rabbit eyes do really well in the south from what I hear. So I'm excited about that. And these have actually already set fruit. Both bushes act like they didn't even know they were transplanted, which is fine by me. Got another cutting of the bee balm here. I'm using it as ground cover at the edge because I have a lot of trouble with the grass encroaching in on wood chips when I lay down mulch. The grass here is very persistent. Got a few more little mustards here and there. And this little witch hazel guild, you can see that the wild violets are trying to take over, so I'm gonna have to weed out a few. But every time I weed out wild violets, I just feed them to the chickens. They love them. These are my tulips, which are now spent, and my lamb's ear, which came out really nicely through the winter. So I'm happy with this little guild so far. I made a video about planting a guild from seed. We have yet to see if that's going to be successful. And if it's not, we're going to reseed it. And we're still going to plant it from seed. All right, moving forward, you can see we haven't mulched this part of the connection yet. Eventually, this is going to be a semicircle around our campfire. And I wanted to create kind of a nice little protected cove feel for the people who are going to be around the campfire. It's another persimmon. It's also known as Nikita's Gift. This one was also just a stick last year, and it put on all kinds of nice side branches. I have not made any prune cuts to this, but you know, in the future perhaps. I've got a couple elephant garlics and some more spent tulips. I planted a few mustards from seed, and you can see they're just starting to pop. They've got these little heart-shaped leaves like most of the brassicas do. I've also got some giant red mustard that I planted from seed. You can just see that little bit of purple at the center there. And there. So I'm kind of hedging my bets with the mustards. I want to grow and freeze a bunch of that for the winter. So other than that, not much yet around this. And I'm not sure I've planted anything at all around this jujube yet. This one got eaten by a deer last year, and it feels supple, like it's still alive, but it has not put on any new growth yet. So we'll see how that one does. Well, I did plant some stuff. Looks like I've got cilantro coming up here. So that's good to know. All right, coming over here, we've got a brand new trellis. This one I plan to be largely Malabar spinach and cucumbers, but we'll see. Plans change, you know. I'm a woman. I'm allowed to change my mind. But this is just another pathway to be able to come through to this side of the food forest, to the tree line. Just creating pathways that are also growing spaces here with a trellis. So we built this yesterday. Super happy with it. And I think it's going to be a real key part of the future build. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the main food forest, and you'll see it's very linear. It's in rows. And when I first moved here, I planted this in rows because I thought I was planting an orchard. At the time, I didn't know anything about permaculture or food forests or anything like that. So everything, as you can see, is planted in rows. And instead of disrupting the trees to do something different, we're just working with it. And so I've mulched in between and planted in between. And we're going to start over here with the hazelnut row. You can see the hazelnut is now 4 years old, doing very nicely, although it struggled the first couple years. I am super happy with this spot right here. So last year I planted potato onions, which are a type of perennial onion that's split. So you can see this one's split into 3. So I'm going to get 3 onions from the one I planted here. Again, a 3-way split, 3-way split, 4-way split. So I've got some really nice growth on the potato onions. I've got the only rhubarb that survived last year's heat is looking really happy and healthy. I've got a tiny blueberry coming back and some garlic that is looking very happy as well, coming out of all the organic material that was laid down. Over here, this is kind of interesting. I've got a whole mat of wild strawberry. They're not particularly big or useful, but for now, they're fine. I've got some other onions over here that are a little more wimpy looking. Not sure what's going on with those. And again, the potato onions here are a little bit smaller, so they tend to like the conditions closer to the front there, it seems. I've got another blueberry. This one is just a stick. It was bought very small and very young, with some Egyptian walking onions behind it. Now, a couple days ago, I came in and did a whole bunch of weeding and clearing. So you can see I've laid down the grass as kind of a mulch or a chop and drop. And that is just to help build the organic material in the soil. It's just going to decompose. So while this does look messy with stuff like that, that material is going to decompose and keep the ground moist for this little blueberry here, for example. This section in here was mostly annuals last year. It was tomatoes and cosmos, things of that nature. And I will likely use it for annuals again this year, so I'm just going to keep it clear for now. This is a wild plant, but it's a nice creepy ground cover, and I'm going to keep that because I need some ground covers. And then we have some wild upland cress, or highland cress, or Creasy greens as they're called. And I have a little segment that I filmed about what we're doing with those. So here in my hazelnut row, I've got, I believe it's called a highland cress or upland cress. It's a wild plant. It's got a really nice flavor, kind of like a spinach. The leaves are edible. It's really great. And this came up all on its own here. And I'm seeing this as something really important because right now we're in early April, which is part of the Hungry Gap, where not a lot of edible things are coming up, but this is. And I had another one come up in a pot that I hadn't planted anything in, so a so-called weed popped up in it. So I'm going to transplant that right next to this. Maybe they can cross-pollinate each other and start a nice little patch. Clearly, it likes the soil conditions here and the sun conditions. So I'm taking my cue from this little guy, and we're going to plant the other one here too. This little guy had much deeper roots than anticipated. I'm going to place it right here next to its buddy. There we have it. Best buds. I'm going to water this little guy in, and we're good to go. Coming down below the hazelnut here, I do have a few potatoes that were hit by frost, and you can see their leaves have gone kind of translucent. They were not happy with that frost last night. And I have a volunteer lettuce coming up. We're going to let that be for sure. And underneath this hazelnut, which is looking very happy and healthy indeed. Look at this. This is a 4-year-old hazelnut, or at least it's been here for 4 years. Underneath, a couple years ago, maybe last year, I planted some crimson clover, and it reseeded itself. So it's acting both as a ground cover and nitrogen fixer here underneath the hazelnut, and I'm very happy about that. So that's this row so far. In here I had a bunch of zinnias and cosmos, so this will be another annual section that I'm just leaving empty for now. And coming along to the end here, the only perennial that has made it is this little hollyhock. That is it. Nothing else has made it in this spot, so it's earned its keep here. All right, right now we are looking from the back side of the pear and cherry and mulberry row. You can see our first little plant here is an Asian pear. This one is way far behind some of the other trees. The first 2 years it was girdled twice by a rabbit. And what rabbits will do when the tree is only about this big around is they'll come and they'll just chomp it. They don't eat the whole branch, but they chomp it off. And this poor little guy was chomped twice. So it has not made quite the same strides that the other trees have, but it's alive, it's doing well. And it's got a native rose that is starting to climb up it, and we're gonna let it be. Also a native clover at the base, and we're gonna let that be as well. Irises have come back. They got a little bit burnt by the frost, kind of like a freezer burn at the tips here, but they're recovering nicely. Last year's sage came back. I wasn't sure it would in this area. I've got another blank space here for some annuals. There may also be some artichokes in here. They died back last year. It's still too cold to know whether or not they're going to come back. And then we get into the strawberry ground cover. So last year I came around in my food forest and I planted 8 to 12 strawberries in various spots. This is one of those spots that started with 8 to 12 strawberries. So we'll just call it 10 for now. So you can see there are now way more than 10. They're looking happy, they're looking healthy, they're putting on blooms. So I'm really looking forward to having some strawberries this year. And these are some daffodils that are just a little spent. All right, coming into the cherries. This down here, I'm going to mulch a little bit around the edge of that, but otherwise I'm going to leave this area. I'm going to let it go back to grass so that we have a path for the riding mower to go through in between here. And this one, I always mix up which one's which. Is this the Napoleon? Yeah, this one's the Napoleon. So this cherry did not put on any flowers this year, but is happy, healthy. I like the shape of it, and so I think we can call that a success. Got some more daffodils and strawberries in here. Some more garlic. This needs to be weeded out. You can see some of the native plants are starting to come in. Here I've got kind of an interesting thing going on. I've got some native strawberries that you can see have little yellow blossoms. It makes them easy to tell apart. Native strawberries growing right next to the domestic strawberries. So I'm kind of wondering if these are going to cross. Here's another little patch of the natives. You can tell also the difference in the leaf size. The domesticated strawberries have pretty big leaves while the natives have fairly small ones. But this patch has just been going great guns. It's been putting on all sorts of blossoms, and hopefully it's going to start setting fruit soon. I was really happy with this. I'll put in some footage from March as well, when all of these daffodils were in bloom around the strawberries. I wanted to include some early blooming plants for the pollinators. And so I made kind of a little strawberry daffodil cherry guild here. And speaking of cherries, this is a Black Republican. Yes, that is the name of this tree. And it makes black cherries. This breed was developed by a Quaker, according to the online lore from Trees of Antiquity, which is where I got this from. There it is. And I've planted some larkspur from seed. It's about the time of year to start doing that. You can see more irises. And here's where it starts to get interesting. I know you're probably like, Jess, there's just a bunch of sticks and green stuff. Yes, but they're really interesting sticks and green stuff, okay? So I left some of these sticks in the ground so I could identify where things were that I planted. And here we have asparagus. And this was knocked back once already by early frost, but the fronds are coming back up. I'm assuming this one's female since it's starting to put up little blossoms. But I have some green asparagus. I have a couple spots of purple asparagus, as we will see. And they're coming up just fine. Over here you can see I still have some sticks in the ground. This was some old okra that I scattered the seeds. This one's a canna. It's not quite time for them to come up yet. Still a little too cold, but I left the leaves that died back just so I wouldn't accidentally plant something else in its spot. All right, swinging around to the Montmorency cherry, who you can see has beautiful blossoms on it right now. Down here I also left a few things in place. So you can see this stick was left in place. This is from an echinacea. And you can see that plant is coming back just fine. So I can actually snap that off. I don't need it to remind me anymore, because now I know that that's what this is. This is the bee balm that I took the cuttings from. The original plant took up this much space last year, and now it's spread over to here, through here, out over here. I think it's going to spread like mint. It is part of that family. And I've also got some really sweet native fleabanes here. The pollinators really love those. So I'm keeping them in place. They've got kind of a little guild going on here with the echinacea, wild violet, bee balm, fleabane, and then this beautiful tree that is all in bloom. I am so happy to see this. I am super excited about this tree. This is the first time it's blossomed, and it's absolutely full. It is also self-fruitful, so the fact that the other two cherries did not bloom this year doesn't actually matter. So hopefully we're going to get a whole bunch of cherries off of this sour cherry tree. I am so excited. We're finally at the point where the fruit trees are starting to pop off. Hey, you know it would be super cool? If you hit the subscribe button like that, because then you get to see this food forest back here develop through the years. That's going to be super cool. All right, this area in here, I've planted a few seeds, some rhubarb from seed. There's a returning canna. It did not get the message that it's not time yet, and it got a little hit by the frost this morning, but it should be all right coming back. Here is another set of the asparagus. You can see this one did not like the frost. This is one of the purple ones. They seem to be a little more prone to the frost than the green. And I managed to step on some garlic chives. This patch over here is doing way better though. Garlic chives are one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. You can see the leaves are flat and they're not hollow like regular chives. These are, but they're a lot more juicy. And garlic chives are exactly what they sound like. They are wonderfully flavored like garlic and chives with a kind of a touch of sweetness and juiciness to them. And this is a young chive plant. I planted this from seed last year, and so this year these will probably get much taller. These are just the newly emerging leaves, but I've seen garlic chives get well up to 2 feet long, and they're just beautiful, and the flavor is wonderful. And if you can plant them, I think you should. All right, here we have the wild violet takeover of 2026. This bunch of sticks here is a mulberry that is just starting to put on its leaf buds, so it's doing pretty all right. Next to it, I planted a gooseberry plant not long ago, so hopefully that will come through for us. But you can see I have a ton of wild violets through here. They have just really taken over, and I'm going to have to clear this out if I'm going to plant anything, which is the plan. I'll probably have a lot of annuals in here between the mulberry and the bush cherry. This bush cherry is now 2 years old. Eventually this is gonna be like 5 foot round, 5 feet tall roughly, and produce a lot of cherries for us. It did flower this year, but I don't think anything's set on it, so we may have to wait another year for that. You can see I've also got some more potato onions here being kind of crowded out by weeds, so I gotta get to that. This whole bed just needs weeding. Might be difficult to see, but there are indeed strawberries in here with these, so I need to clear around those. Got another mulberry here. This is a bed that needs more perennials. I would have thought the strawberries would have crowded out the violets a little more, but they're still in here, and they're still providing a lot of really good ground cover. There's just spots like this where the violets are taking over. I have so many violets on this property. It's really kind of unbelievable. So we're back here at the new trellis, and this row has maybe a fig if it's made it, an apple, a nectarine, and at least one plum. Whether or not we have a second one is questionable. I planted a little fig right here. It feels like it's still alive, but I think the top has died from about here up. So it might still make it. We're gonna have to wait and see. So this is a spot where you can see I've cleared some violets. I keep coming out here and clearing a patch and feeding it to the chickens. This right here is the rootstock of an apple tree that I grafted, but the top of the graft died, and so now there's only the rootstock. I'm gonna let it grow and see what happens. And it's right there next to some irises. They're gonna be buddies now. And here This was just a gorgeous canna last year. This is another one of those spots where I've left the leaves up so that the spot is marked so that when it starts coming back, I don't accidentally dig it up. Through here, we had a whole bunch of annuals. This was mostly Tabasco peppers and beans and tomatoes last year. So we'll see what we do with it this year. I do seem to have a dahlia coming back up right there. And I planted those from seed last year, so super proud of that. Again, we have another violet takeover. Basically, the next month of my life is going to be spent clearing the violets and planting other things. Eventually, when this food forest is really planted out, there's not going to be room for anything else to grow, but I need to get more perennials in between my trees. Last year was the first year of me converting this to a food forest. And so my goal was simply to put at least one perennial in between each tree. But honestly, it needs to be more like 5 or 6 in between each tree. And we're just going to continue to work towards that. This is a green sleeves apple. This is one that I grafted in a local workshop. Another local person who had a green sleeves apple tree brought in cuttings. So the graft at the bottom of this, I'm going to have to pull that. We don't want it growing from the graft, from the rootstock. The rootstock on this is the same as the one that's that little guy growing down there. But you can see the graft took all right, and I've got a nice little tree. We'll see if it makes it. So nothing through here until we get to a nectarine. This is a new addition, a very recent addition. And below it, I planted 2 Hinnomaki red gooseberries. And these have just taken off like they didn't even notice they were transplanted. These are super happy. The other gooseberry I showed you earlier next to the mulberry was a green gooseberry, and it has not put on growth anywhere near these two. So I'm very happy with that. This is the beginning of a new guild here with the nectarine and 2 gooseberries. If you're wondering about the random stepping stone, we had a chicken pass yesterday. And, when you raise animals and one of them passes, they might as well be fertilizer and useful still on the property. It's not good to waste things. Here, right in here, let me back up a little bit. I've let this mostly go back to grass so that the mower can come through. Although we discovered that when we did that and mowed it, that we had forgotten about a certain thing that was planted in here. And that was asparagus. So we're going to bring the mulch back out to here so we can enjoy this asparagus that we have mowed. Hardy little thing. All right, plum trees. All right, here in the Plum Tree Guild, I have special plans for this, but I'm not announcing them yet. You're going to have to stay tuned till May, folks. Anyway, we had 2 trees here. You can see one's been cut off. The top of it died. The rootstock is now sprouting. It was a Santa Rosa plum, and of course it didn't do well here. I mean, this isn't California. We're in East Tennessee. And this is a Stanley prune. This one's been doing fantastic. It's been big and happy the entire time it has been here. So right now there's not much to show you here in this guild because this is going to be planted out later. Although I can show you, we have a little blueberry that I got last year. It was just a tiny little stick, and there it is. And also remarkably, I put a fresh layer of wood chips on here, and look at this. Some cilantro that self-seeded last year is coming up through the wood chips, and that is just unbelievable to me. But it just shows you how hardy it is when you grow your own stuff and it reseeds to the climate. Beneath the plum, I also have some lilies coming out. Let me get my shadow out of the way here. So, got our beautiful plum tree. And down below, there's some lilies coming back from last year. So we're happy to see those. And we'll have a nice little guild going on here. I need to find some good shrubby things to put in back of here. But that's just part of the building process. We'll get to it. All right, here we have the apple trees. And I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. This guild so far only has a toad lily right here that we'll see if it pops back. The takeover of the violets once again. A bush cherry, a Nanking bush cherry, more violet takeover, and a nectarine that we put in the ground just yesterday. It's a June princess, and we put it right next to the other one right there, so they're not far from each other for pollination purposes. We chose these two just because they looked really, really healthy when we got them. You can see we watered it in. So this is a new addition, and so far so good. Coming down this way, this row I had the hardest time keeping up on last year, but the more we plant in here, the less we have to worry about that. But as you can see, more violet takeover that I have to take care of. I really need to plant some creepers and ground cover. Maybe we'll get some oregano in here or something. This is a Hughes Virginia crabapple. I was not hopeful about how this was going to do last year. Last year it really struggled, but last year we also had just a really rough summer, and right now it's looking super healthy, like it's gonna make it. So I'm happy to see that. It is right here next to a sweet bough. This sweet bough has a funky shape. It's got a double lead going on it. I couldn't quite decide how I was going to prune it, so I just left it this year. You can see though, this is the first year this apple tree is in bloom. And it is just so pretty. It's definitely got some nice flowers on them. And so I'm very hopeful for what that might mean for us harvest-wise. Not a lot going on in between, except for we've got a returning hollyhock. I'll probably plant a few more around here and just have a nice big hollyhock bundle there for the pollinators. And then another patch of strawberries. These have really nice leaves on them. And look at these clusters here. These are looking good. This is the wild onion, aka onion grass, that the channel is named after. And you can see the base of this got completely overtaken by grass. This is one of my next projects coming out here, but this is really the star of the show today. Franklin cider apple. Look at how many blossoms are on this tree. The pollinators have been all over this. Let me show you. Moving on from the Franklin cider, these trees supposedly, according to their description, at full maturity can give you up to 60 gallons of cider. So we're looking forward to that. As we're coming along in here, I do have some perennials coming up, but they were not planted. This is a wild raspberry. This is also a wild raspberry. And then, of course, we've got our strawberries. Got a lily coming back up. Another different kind of lily coming back up. So we've got some lilies, strawberries, and raspberries in between the Franklin cider and this tree right here. This one is called an opalescent. It's not putting on quite so many flowers as some of the others. This is its first year. This one was a Trees of Antiquity buy. But it's a happy tree. It's a healthy tree. So we're happy with that. Coming around, we got a few more lilies, some more strawberries, and look at this asparagus. Look at how happy that is coming up. This is year 2 on the asparagus. We're probably not going to harvest them. Well, you shouldn't start harvesting them until next year. This is another purple one. You can see it just looks exactly like some grocery store asparagus there. So I'm very happy with those, that they're coming back. I had a rosemary that didn't make it. And some cleavers here, which are medicinally useful. If you follow Legacy Wilderness Academy, he's got a really great video on how to use these. And finally, last but not least, the Arkansas Black. It's only blooming on the right side. Last year, this tree set its first blossoms, and it had 2 apples that actually set. Unfortunately, one was knocked off by the wind, and one was pulled off by a deer, so we didn't get to eat any. So I'm hoping that this year, maybe we get to try a couple of our apples. If you watched my tree day video, you will be happy to know that the sumacs are coming along nicely. They're starting to put on leaves. And we'll head over this area over here where we created the Apple Tree Guild, and I'll show you how that's going. Okay, I talked about this area in my tree day video. We have got the apple that was being grown from seed is doing absolutely fantastic. The elderberry is doing its thing. Wild raspberry is coming in nicely. We don't mind that at all. And then the little red bud is putting on leaves. So it looks like we're doing all right. It's nice to see. So you might be wondering, Jess, what are you going to do about the wild violet takeover of 2026? Well, I'm just going to keep planting perennials. I'm going to keep supporting things like the strawberries to take over the space. And you know, plants like this is going to have a 5-foot span on all sides. So when this really comes to maturity, it's going to take up a much bigger space than it does now. And as I keep planting things, the space for weeds is going to disappear. Let me show you. So earlier, we came over into the cherry trees, right? Well, in this space, there's not much room for weeds. Why? Because I have bee balm and chives. I did let the wild fleabane grow, but I don't consider those weeds. I like those. And then coming over here to the Black Republican cherry, we've got irises. We've got strawberries. We've got daffodils. We've got buttercrunch lettuce, which, yep, the rabbits are not eating it all, folks. We've got it in here still. If you saw my Working with Wildlife video, you know we have rabbits around here. We picked some of this just yesterday for sandwiches. Anyway, but you can see there isn't much room for weeds here. Why? Because it's all planted out. And that is the goal for the rest of this place. To have it so planted out that there are not room for weeds. So what are the things we've got going this year? Well, I'm planting perennial kale. I currently have 9 larger plants and 10 smaller ones. Yes, I know we don't need that many. The 10 smaller ones will probably be to give away to friends and family who want to grow perennial kale. But the other 9, I'm going to keep. And we're going to plant out. And those get nice and big and bushy. And will take up a large amount of space. For example, I could put one right here in between the mulberry and the Nanking cherry, put one right in this space, and it'll take up a nice big space right in there. I've also got artichokes started some yarrow. So we're starting things that can take over the space that the wild violets would otherwise take over. But we also are going to be planting perennials. So for example, look over here. I planted these little radishes. And you know what? They're going to take up this space for now, so that the wild violets don't. And we're just going to keep planting and keep on keeping on until all this space is filled and there's no longer any room for weeds like this. This area right here is going to be the area where I plan to plant the Guild of Seeds and Grains, and I'm going to make it all the way from the irises all the way back to the nectarine. So this is going to be all annual plants, actually, mostly, that can produce either grains or edible seeds. So things like amaranth and chufa. That's a new one for me. A friend gave me some chufa seeds. We're going to try those out. I've got peanut seeds, got some sorghum. We've got all kinds of stuff. And we're just going to make a whole great big guild of it right here and see what we can grow. If you want to learn more about it, I did a video called A Guild of Edible Grains and Seeds. Definitely check it out. Thanks for coming along today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the tour. In the future, we're going to be doing some videos about crop highlights, new guild ideas. So stay tuned, follow along. I'll see you soon.